Good day, learners and listeners. This is our first program in our series on agricultural science, which is produced for grade 9 learners and anybody else who's interested. Today we're discussing the value of agriculture to society. Please get your pen and a notebook ready as I'm going to ask you some questions at the end of the program. My name is Anna Iyambo and we have Peneafo and Zaka with us in studio today. Welcome, ladies. At the end of this program, you should be able to define sustainable agriculture, explain the contribution of agriculture to the family and the region, discuss ways in which farmers can practice agriculture in sustainable manner, and list ways in which crops and animals provide food, clothing, and other commodities to people. We all know that sustainable use means to use something in such a way that there is enough left for future generations. But what is meant by sustainable agriculture?
We learned about this in primary school. Sustainable agriculture refers to maximizing the benefits of natural resources for the present generation without limiting future generations to do the same.
You are right, Peneafo. People need to practice agriculture in a sustainable manner. Farmers should aim to conserve natural resources such as soil, water, indigenous plants, insects, and birds while providing food and employment. They should prevent soil and water pollution as well as deforestation. Farmers should maintain soil fertility by applying organic fertilizer such as manure and compost instead of artificial fertilizer.
Exactly. That means sustainable agriculture can be achieved if farmers use as little chemicals as possible. Farmers should try alternative measures such as crop rotation to control weeds, pests, and diseases. Manure and compost can be used instead of artificial fertilizers. Farmers should plant crops that are adapted to the local environment and that are more drought resistant. If we practice agriculture in a sustainable way, there will be enough food for the future generations.
Well, I think agriculture can be a great contribution to the family. If a family can grow its own crops and keep a few animals, it can provide enough food for the family. By selling the extra crops and sometimes a few animals, the family can get an income. Agriculture can also provide self-employment to family members who otherwise might find it difficult to find employment.
Just imagine how you can build up the whole region through agriculture. If farmers produce more products, they can sell them to their neighbors to provide income for the region. Small shops and other businesses will be established in the region, which will create job opportunities. Agriculture will also provide raw materials to secondary industries in the region for processing.
Yes, agriculture is the most important provider of food to families and regions. In Namibia, agriculture is the largest industry that provides employment. People are employed as farm workers, hawkers who buy food from farmers for resale, truck drivers who transport agricultural products, veterinary officers, and in other agricultural-related careers.
I would like to know the reasons why farmers keep certain animals and certain crops and how they provide food, clothing, and other commodities to people.
Crops such as maize grains are staple food for many people. Seeds from some crops such as sunflowers can be used in the production of oil. Some crops such as cotton can be used for producing clothing. Animals such as cattle and goats can also provide food such as meat and milk. Meat can be processed into biltong and milk into cheese. In addition, animals can provide materials used in clothing production. For example, wool from sheep can be used to make jerseys and skin from cattle can be used to make leather products.
Wow! Thank you for telling us about sustainable agriculture today and the uses of animal and crops. Let's now look at what we've learned from today's lesson. Sustainable agriculture refers to maximizing the benefits for the present generation without limiting the future generation from doing the same. Agriculture is the most important provider of food, self-employment, and income to the family. Farmers should conserve natural resources and prevent water pollution. Plants and animals provide people with food, clothing, and other commodities. And this brings us to the end of today's lesson. But before I say goodbye, here are your questions for today. 1. Discuss the importance of agriculture to the family. And 2. Suggest 4 things that farmers can do to farm more sustainably. I hope you've enjoyed the lesson and have taken notes. This program was written by Susan Lawrence. So until next time, take care. Good day, learners and listeners. This is our second program in our series on agricultural science, produced for grade 9 learners and anybody else interested in the lesson. Today we're discussing environmental factors and plant growth. Please get your pen and a notebook ready, as I'm going to ask you some questions at the end of the program. My name is Anna Yambo, and today we have Wanonga and Vianda Muye with us in studio. We are busy with general agriculture, and by the end of this program, you should be able to identify environmental factors influencing plant growth, for example, wind, temperature, humidity, and rainfall. Describe the effects of environmental factors on plant growth, and explain why some areas in Namibia receive more rain than others. Good day, Wanonga and Viandamuye. You told me there's something you would like to discuss with me today.
Good day, ma'am. And yes, there is something very important I want to discuss. Wanonga and I grow maize and other vegetables in our school garden. I realized that her vegetables always look better than mine, and she told me it is because of environmental factors. She always laughs at my small tomatoes and watermelons, and today I would like her to tell me more about environmental factors.
Calm down, Viandamuye. Environmental factors are factors that influence plant growth, either by increasing or slowing down plant growth. Environmental factors are wind, temperature, humidity, and rainfall. Let us start with wind as a factor that influences plant growth. Viandamuye, you always complain about the wind that breaks your tomato plants, and that the soil dries out faster when the wind blows. Have you ever tried to do something about it?
Well, in my garden, I put up anything that breaks the speed of the wind. I plant trees around my garden, and these are called windbreakers because the row of trees breaks the speed of the wind. I also put up shade netting in my garden, and the wind never breaks any of my plants. However, I do know that plants need wind to carry pollen and seeds and to dry the environment around the plant to prevent fungal diseases.
That is exactly what I also do in my garden. That solves only one of our problems though. Let us now look at temperature. What do you know about temperature?
Temperature is how hot or cold the air around us is. temperature is divided into 3 ranges, namely minimum temperature, optimum temperature, and maximum temperature.
Great! Minimum temperature is temperature below 10 degrees Celsius. Plants do not grow and reproduce well in this temperature range because the cells freeze. Optimum temperature is the best temperature range in which crops grow well and reproduce maximally. It ranges between 20 degrees Celsius to 30 degrees Celsius. Maximum temperatures ranges from 40 degrees Celsius and above. Higher maximum temperature increases evaporation and transpiration. It also stunts plant growth and will cause the plant to wilt.
Wow, that makes a lot of sense. What should a farmer or a gardener like me do to reduce the effects of high temperature?
Good question. They should grow crops that are adapted to high temperatures for survival. You could also provide shade and apply mulching.
Good information, Wanonga. We still have to talk about humidity.
You are right. Let us look at humidity. Humidity is the amount of water vapor in the air. If there is a lot of water vapor in the air, it is called high humidity. When there is less water vapor in the air, it is called low humidity. High humidity reduces evaporation and transpiration because the air is already saturated with moisture. The disadvantage of high humidity is that it increases the development of fungal diseases. Low humidity increases evaporation and transpiration. But the good thing about it is that it reduces the development of fungal diseases.
Is rainfall not also one of the environmental factors that influences plant growth?
You are right. Rainfall is also one of the environmental factors. Low rainfall leaves your soil dry, which stunts plant growth because there is less water available to plants. On the other hand, very high rainfall increases soil erosion. It also makes the soil absorb too much water and plants grow poorly in waterlogged soil.
Good explanation, Wanonga. I do, however, have one more question. Why do some areas in Namibia receive more rain than others?
That's a good question. Areas along the Namibian coast, such as Swakopmund, receive less rainfall or sometimes no rain at all. This is due to cold water moisture that moves in from the cold Benguela current along the Atlantic coast, which causes the temperature to drop sharply. The prevailing southwestern wind is cooled down by the Benguela current to the extent that there is no cloud formation. That is why there is very little rain at the Namibian coast and over the desert. Other areas in Namibia, such as areas in the Caprivi region and areas around Tsumeb, receive more rainfall, about 600 mm per annum. This is because it is closer to the equator where the sun is hot, causing water vapor to rise. As the water vapor rises, it cools down and condenses to form clouds, which become heavy, and then it rains.
Thank you so much, and it was good hearing from you. Let's now look at what we've learned from today's lesson. Wind helps with pollination and dries the plant's environment to decrease fungal diseases. Wind can break plants and it increases the rate of transpiration. High temperature increases the rate of transpiration and evaporation. High humidity increases fungal diseases but reduces transpiration. Namibia is a dry country and only a few places receive more than 600 millimeters of rain per year. Listeners and learners, this brings us to the end of today's lesson about environmental factors and plant growth. You can now answer the following questions in your notebook. 1. Discuss how a crop farmer can reduce the negative effects of high temperature on plant growth. And 2. Explain why more rain falls inland than at the coast. I hope you've enjoyed today's lesson and have taken notes to study. This program was written by Susan Lawrence. Until next time, Take care.
The Education Radio Initiative is possible with support from the Ministry of Education as part of the Education and Training Sector Improvement Program.
Good day, learners and listeners. This is our third program in our series on agricultural science, produced for grade 9 learners and anyone else who is interested. Today we're discussing population density and agriculture. Please get your pen and a notebook ready, as I'm going to ask you some questions at the end of the program. My name is Anna Iambo, and today I have Lina and Likias with me in the studio. At the end of this program, you should be able to explain the effects of population increase on land use and food production in the region, and suggest ways of increasing food production to cater for the increasing population.
You know what, Likias? Windhoek has many people compared to Oshikuku, where I was born.
Definitely. The number of people in Windhoek has increased over the past years. Even my family used to live in the last row of houses in Pioneers Park area, but now we are in the middle of all the houses. That means the number of people increased and they built more houses.
The land that was supposed to be used for agricultural purposes to produce more food is now occupied by houses. We might even experience a food shortage in the future because the number of people is increasing, but the land is not increasing.
You are right, Lina. Land should be reclaimed to be used for food production to feed the increasing population.
Likius, wait for me. Good morning, Lina and Likius. I've been calling you. Why are you ignoring me?
We didn't hear you. We were just too busy discussing how the number of people has increased in the past few years, especially in Windhoek.
Yeah, what you're saying is true. The population in Windhoek, and in fact the whole of Namibia, is increasing. In 1970, the population of Namibia was about 750,000, and in 2020, it increased to 2.5 million.
That is a big increase, but it should not be a problem though. Because Namibia is a land of wide open areas, there is enough space for everybody.
Yeah, what you're saying makes sense. But I have one question for you. Where will everybody get food if the number of people is increasing?
As the number of people increases, more food needs to be produced to feed them. But the land is not increasing. So in order for farmers to produce more food, they must use modern farming methods. This includes the use of machinery, the application of fertilizers, and the use of chemicals such as pesticides and herbicides to control pests, diseases, and weeds.
In addition to what Lina said, farmers should also try to produce more meat from animals by giving them growth hormones to increase growth rate.
Correct. But don't you think trying to produce more food by using methods such as application of fertilizers and the use of chemicals to control pests have negative effects?
Yes, they have negative effects on the land. The use of chemicals causes water and land pollution. Growth hormones given to animals can damage people's health, and the continuous use of heavy machinery on the land will further destroy soil structure.
Farmers should also better practice organic farming, where they grow crops and keep animals without the use of any chemicals. Farmers can use organic fertilizers such as manure instead of organic fertilizers. Crop rotation can be used to control pests, diseases, and weeds instead of using chemicals. Farmers can use better adapted seeds such as drought-resistant varieties and better adapted animals as a way to produce more food.
Very good, Likius. In order to produce more food, farmers should become better skilled. Land to be reclaimed should be used for agricultural purposes. Farmers should practice organic farming, which is a natural method instead of using chemicals which cause pollution. Farmers should use animals that are well adapted to the local environment instead of using growth hormones, which can damage human health.
I have learned so much in a very short time today. I have learned that more people need more food. Land is not increasing, and other ways have to be found to increase food production. The use of chemicals can be harmful to the health of humans, and organic farming should be practiced. Farmers should practice crop rotation to control pests, diseases, and weeds, and better adapted plant varieties and animals should be used instead of using growth hormones.
Listeners and learners, this brings us to the end of today's lesson about population density and agriculture. You can now answer the following questions in your notebook. 1. Discuss the effects of population increase on land use and food production. And 2. Suggest ways to produce more crops without causing any damage to the environment. I hope you've enjoyed today's lesson and have taken notes to study. This program was written by Susan Lawrence, and until next time, take care.
The Education Radio Initiative is possible with support from the Ministry of Education as part of the Education and Training Sector Improvement Program.
Good day, learners and listeners. This is our fourth program in our series on agricultural science, which is produced for grade 9 learners and anybody else who is interested in the subject. Today we're discussing soil formation. Please get your pen and a notebook ready, as I'm going to ask you some questions at the end of the program. My name is Anna Iyambo, and we have Gordon and Chantel with us in studio today. At the end of this program, you should be able to explain what is meant by weathering, identify types and agents of weathering, and describe how soil is formed through the process of weathering. Good day, Gordon and Chantel.
Good day, ma'am.
Good day, ma'am.
Today we would like you to tell us about the weathering of soil. But first of all, I would like to know, what is soil?
Soil is the upper layer of earth consisting of broken rock particles, air, inorganic particles, living organisms, and water. It is where plants grow. Even though plants can grow without soil, it would be impossible to feed a whole nation without soil.
That's a very good explanation, Gordon. Where does the soil come from and how was it formed?
Soil is formed when rocks weather or break down, and the small particles that break off from the rocks then form soil. This process is called weathering, and it takes place over millions of years.
Correct. But what causes the rocks to weather or break down?
Soil weathering can be divided into 3 types of weathering processes, namely physical weathering, chemical weathering, and biological weathering. Let me first explain physical weathering and the agents that help in physical weathering. In physical weathering, rocks are broken into smaller pieces by natural forces without changing the chemical composition of the rock. There are 4 physical weathering agents. They are falling water, flowing water, wind, and temperature change.
Which means that in physical weathering, only natural factors are involved. Tell us more about how these agents contribute to physical weathering.
I certainly will. Let us look at falling water first. The rocks underneath the waterfall are always smooth and hollow because the water falls on them continuously. This breaks away sharp pieces of rock, making the rocks smooth. Flowing water that is running in rivers, streams, and the ocean takes along stones and rocks. These stones and rocks roll over each other and rub away sharp pieces so that the rocks become smooth and round. The pieces that break off form part of the soil.
Now I know where the smooth round stones that I have in my garden come from.
Let us now look at how wind causes physical weathering of rocks. Wind blows soil particles against rocks. This breaks off small particles from the rocks. These small particles form part of the soil.
So if you walk outside when the wind blows strongly and you're wearing short pants, is that what you feel against your legs?
That is exactly how wind causes physical weathering. If these small particles constantly blow against the rocks, small pieces will eventually break off to form soil.
Let me explain how temperature change causes physical weathering of rocks. A sudden change in temperature causes expansion of minerals when the rock heats up, and a contraction of minerals when the rocks cool down. This contraction and expansion of rock minerals cause the rock to crack and break. Small pieces break off to form soil. There is another way how a change in temperature can cause pieces of rock to break off. During a rain shower, water collects in the cracks in the rocks. During the night, when it gets very cold, the water freezes in these cracks. When water freezes, it expands. This expansion of water between the rocks then causes the cracks to become wider and smaller pieces of rock to break off.
Oh boy, this is fascinating stuff. You also mentioned chemical weathering. What is that?
Chemical weathering is when rocks break down because of a change in their chemical composition. Chemical weathering agents are carbon dioxide, oxygen, and water. Let me explain how each agent causes chemical weathering. Carbon dioxide in the air combines with rainwater to form weak carbonic acid. This acid can dissolve limestone and chalk rocks to form soil. Oxygen reacts with certain elements in rocks, for example, iron, to form iron oxide, which weathers more easily. Water reacts with some of the minerals in the rocks, changing the composition of the rock. Some minerals can also dissolve in water.
We're not done yet. We still have to talk about biological weathering and the agents of biological weathering.
Let me first define biological weathering. Biological weathering is when rocks are broken down by the activities of living organisms. This weathering is caused by plant roots, animals, people and their implements, and microorganisms. I will now explain in detail how each agent causes biological weathering. Plant roots grow into cracks in rocks, and as the roots grow, the cracks become bigger. This breaks off pieces of rock, which then form part of the soil. Animals that live in the soil, such as earthworms, termites, and ants, break the soft texture of the soil during burrowing. They also make tunnels that bring air and water into the soil for further weathering. The hooves of bigger animals can also break bigger rocks into smaller ones when they walk over the rocks. Microorganisms such as bacteria and fungi produce weak organic acid during the decomposition of organic material, which dissolves the rocks. People and their implements break down rocks into smaller particles to form soil during digging and construction of houses and roads using heavy tools and machines.
This was very informative. Thank you very much, Gordon and Chantel, for telling us about soil weathering. Let us now look at what we've learned in today's lesson. Soil is formed through the process of weathering. Physical soil weathering agents are falling water, flowing water, wind and temperature change. Chemical soil weathering agents are carbon dioxide, oxygen and water. Biological soil weathering agents are plant roots, animals, people and their implements. Listeners and learners, this brings us to the end of today's lesson about soil weathering. You can now answer the following questions. 1. Explain how carbon dioxide causes chemical soil weathering. And 2. Discuss plant roots as agents of biological soil weathering. I hope you enjoyed today's lesson and have taken notes to study. This lesson was written by Susan Lawrence, and until next time, take care.
The Education Radio Initiative is possible with support from the Ministry of Education as part of the Education and Training Sector Improvement Program.
Good day, learners and listeners. This is our 5th program in our series of agricultural science, which is produced for grade 9 learners and anybody else who is interested in the subject. Today we're discussing fertilizing soil. Please get your pen and a notebook ready, as I'm going to ask you some questions at the end of the program. My name is Anna Yambo, and we have Moven and Kore with us today in studio. At the end of this program, you should be able to identify different sources of plant nutrients: organic, which is compost, green manure, and kraal manure, and inorganic, which is limestone ammonium nitrate, superphosphate, potassium sulfate, and NPK. You should also be able to discuss the advantages and disadvantages of organic and inorganic fertilizers. Moven and Kore, I want to ask you some questions about how I can improve the growth of plants in my garden. I've been struggling with them for a very long time now. They are growing very slowly, the flowers and fruit on the fruit trees are very few, and the fruit does not taste that good.
There are nutrients you can add to the soil to improve the growth of your trees and plants. To improve plant growth, you can add nitrogen to the soil, because nitrogen improves the growth of plants and also helps in the development of green color in leaves.
Good to know. But how do I add nitrogen to the soil?
There are a few ways to go about it. You can add organic or inorganic fertilizers to the soil. Organic fertilizers are fertilizers such as animal manure, compost, and green manure. Animal manure can be collected from the kraal, and compost can be made by the farmer from any organic material. You can also add green manure, which are plants that are specifically planted to be plowed back into the soil to fertilize it. It usually consists of legumes, as legumes contain a lot of nitrogen that is needed in the soil for plants to grow.
You mentioned adding nitrogen to the soil by using inorganic fertilizers. What's that all about?
Inorganic fertilizers are man-made fertilizers that you buy in the shop. Inorganic fertilizers that contain a lot of nitrogen are limestone, ammonium nitrate, and NPK. Now let me explain NPK fertilizers. The N stands for nitrogen, the P for phosphorus, and the K for potassium. You will find that NPK fertilizer has a ratio printed on the bag, for example, 3:2, 2:1. That means in that bag of fertilizer, 3 parts of the bag consist of nitrogen, 2 parts consist of phosphorus, and 1 part consists of potassium.
So what you're saying is, if I need more nitrogen, I should buy a bag that has a higher number of nitrogen.
Correct. You are getting it.
You also complained about the flowers and fruit on the tree. For the formation of healthy flowers, fruits and seeds, your plant needs more potassium. You can add potassium to the soil by adding organic fertilizers such as manure, compost, and green manure, or you can buy inorganic fertilizers.
So I can buy the NPK fertilizer with a high number of potassium?
Yes, you can. You can buy NPK fertilizers with numbers such as 2 to 3 to 4. You can also buy potassium sulfate.
Have we answered all your questions?
No, wait. What if I do everything you said and my plants still do not grow well?
Then the problem must be with the roots. If the roots are not strong and well developed, they won't be able to take up the nutrients you added. For the formation of healthy plant roots, you need to add phosphorus to the soil by adding organic fertilizers such as compost, green manure, and kraal manure. You can also add phosphorus by adding inorganic fertilizers such as NPK fertilizer and superphosphate. It is best to add phosphorus to the soil before planting, as the plants will then develop healthy roots as they start growing.
You talked about organic and inorganic fertilizers and you explained the two to me. But are there any advantages and disadvantages to choosing each of these?
Whenever we have to make a choice in life, there are advantages and disadvantages. Let me start with the advantages of using organic fertilizers. The advantages of organic fertilizers are: they can improve soil structure when they decompose. They can improve the water holding capacity of the soil. They supply all the nutrients needed by plants, and they do not cause any harm to the environment. The disadvantages are: they work slowly, as they first have to decompose before the nutrients become available, and the farmer does not know how much of each nutrient is supplied by the fertilizer.
Let me give you the advantages of inorganic fertilizers. Nutrients become available fast. The farmer knows exactly what he is adding to the soil. The disadvantages are: they do not improve soil structure. They can cause harm to the environment. They can burn the plants if too much is added. And they are very expensive to buy.
Thank you very much, Moven and Kore. I've learned a lot today. I hope the listeners also learned as much as I did. I've learned the following from today's lesson. Organic sources of plant nutrients are manure, compost, and green manure. Inorganic sources of plant nutrients include ammonium nitrate, superphosphate, and potassium sulfate. The advantages of organic fertilizers are: they improve soil structure and water holding capacity, and they cause no harm to the environment. And the disadvantage of organic fertilizers is that it takes time to release the nutrients. The advantages of inorganic fertilizers are: they work fast and they show specific nutrients. And the disadvantages of inorganic fertilizers are they are expensive, can burn plants if too much is used, and can damage the environment. And that brings us to the end of today's lesson about fertilizing soil. You can now answer the following questions in your notebook. 1. Name 3 organic sources of nitrogen. And 2. State which inorganic fertilizer should be added to the soil before planting. I hope you've all enjoyed the lesson and have taken notes to study. This program was written by Susan Lawrence, and until next time, take care and goodbye.
The Education Radio Initiative is possible with support from the Ministry of Education as part of the Education and Training Sector Improvement Program.